My wife threw my sandwich in the trash and said, "Don't eat that in front of me," after I worked 12 hours in the sweltering sun, paid the rent again, and came home to an empty kitchen. That was when I knew I was done. My name is Alan. I'm 38 years old, and I live in a small town in Arizona. I've been driving for a delivery company for almost 15 years, hauling goods across the Southwest. Most days, I leave at sunrise and don't make it back until late at night. That summer, the temperatures had been brutal, triple digits that felt like they'd melt the tires right off the rig. That day, I finally pulled into the dirt lot of our trailer around 8 at night. I was bone tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones and makes every step feel heavy. As I stepped inside, the swamp cooler rattled and did nothing against the heat. I could hear the faint sound of the TV, but Lydia didn't even glance up when I walked in. She was stretched out on the sofa, fanning herself with a magazine. Her hair was up in a messy bun, and she looked as comfortable as if the world wasn't falling apart around us. The smell of leftover takeout filled the cramped kitchen. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys on the counter. "It's hotter than hell out there. You get the electricity bill paid?" Lydia didn't even bother sitting up. "Oh, that? I meant to, but I didn't have time today." My stomach twisted. "Lydia, I gave you the cash last week. The shut-off notice came again today. They're going to kill the power if it doesn't get paid by tomorrow." She rolled her eyes, as if I was making a big deal out of nothing. "You don't get it, Alan. I've had a long day too, all right? You know how hard it is for me to deal with all this stuff." I stared at her, trying to keep my voice calm. "I've been working 14-hour days in this heat, Lydia. I'm out there busting my ass while you're home. What do you even do all day?" She didn't answer, just went back to flipping through that magazine like I wasn't even there. My shoulders slumped. I felt like a ghost in my own house. I walked over to the fridge, hoping maybe there was a cold beer waiting, but all I found were a couple of half-empty soda cans and some wilted lettuce. "I can't keep doing this," I said finally, my voice low. "I'm giving you everything I have, and it's never enough." Lydia let out a sigh like she'd been waiting for me to shut up. "Oh, come on, Alan. Don't start. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I'll figure it out." But I knew she wouldn't. She never did. And I realized, in that moment, that I was standing alone. There wasn't any us in this marriage anymore. It was just me, carrying all the weight, and her acting like it was all just too much to handle. I walked to the sink and filled a glass of water, my hands shaking as I took a sip. My throat was dry, but my chest felt even drier. Like every last drop of hope had been wrung out of me. I didn't say anything else that night. I just sat down at the small kitchen table, staring at that shut-off notice like it was a neon sign flashing "Wake up, wake up." Because that's what it felt like, a final warning. A bright, unmissable sign that I was done being the only one trying to keep us afloat. And as I watched Lydia flip another page in that magazine, oblivious to the fact that our whole world was about to go dark, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't be the only one caring anymore. The next evening was just as hot. I'd spent the whole day making deliveries in the blistering sun, sweat soaking through my shirt by noon. The rig's AC had been on the fritz for weeks, and every mile felt like a punishment. All I could think about was getting home, cooling off, and grabbing a quick meal. I pulled off the highway at a little roadside burger stand. The neon sign was buzzing, the smell of grilled meat drifting out into the night. I ordered a double cheeseburger and a side of fries, more than I should have, but I was too hungry to care. Back in the truck, I cracked the window and wolfed down the fries one by one, trying to ignore the ache in my shoulders. By the time I pulled into the trailer park, it was almost 9. I carried the brown paper bag into the house, the smell of greasy comfort food filling the cramped kitchen. Lydia was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked in, her face twisting like I'd just tracked mud across a white carpet. "Really, Alan?" she said, her voice dripping with disgust. "Fast food again? That's why you're always broke." I blinked, too tired to argue. "I've been on the road since 6 this morning. I just wanted something quick." She snorted and reached out, snatching the bag from my hands like it was a piece of garbage. "This is why we're always behind on bills. You can't stop wasting money on this junk." Before I could react, she dumped the burger and fries into the trash. The paper bag crumpled, the smell of the food mixing with coffee grounds and eggshells. I just stood there, the shock of it slamming into me like a punch to the gut. "I bought that with my own money," I said quietly, my voice tight. "It wasn't even expensive." Lydia rolled her eyes, her fingers tapping against her phone again. "It's all the same, Alan. You're always wasting money on things we don't need. You're the reason we're drowning in debt." For a second, I wanted to yell, to tell her how I'd been killing myself for years to keep the lights on and the fridge stocked. But I didn't. I just stood there, feeling like my feet were rooted to the linoleum. She didn't even look at me after that. Just went back to scrolling, her face lit up by the glow of her phone. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger. It was emptiness. I realized that it didn't matter if I worked 100 hours a week or spent every penny I had trying to make her happy. To her, I was never more than a walking paycheck. Someone to blame when things got hard. Someone to use and discard when it was convenient. I went to the sink and washed my hands, the water running cold over my fingers. My stomach growled, but I didn't care anymore. I felt hollow, like there was nothing left in me to give. Lydia didn't say another word as I grabbed my keys and went back outside. I sat in the truck for a long time, the heat still clinging to the cab. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done living like this. The next morning, I woke up with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. It was like all the noise in my head had finally gone quiet, replaced by a single, clear thought. I needed to know. I needed to see just how deep this hole really was. I poured myself a cup of coffee, ignoring Lydia as she moved around the kitchen in her robe, humming like nothing had changed. I sat at the little dining table and pulled out the box of bank statements I'd been too tired to look at all these years. My hands trembled a little as I flipped through them. At first, it was small things. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, expenses that didn't make sense. Makeup kits, subscription boxes, new clothes. I kept going, page after page, and the numbers kept adding up. My stomach turned when I found the hidden credit card bill, opened in my name, maxed out at over $8,000. I leaned back in the chair, the weight of it settling over me like a thick blanket. She'd been lying to me for years, spending money like it grew on trees while I sweated my life away on the road. And the worst part was, she'd done it without a second thought. Lydia came in then, her hair pulled up, pretending to care. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sweet but empty. "Going through the bank statements," I said flatly. "I found the credit card you opened in my name." She froze for a second, her eyes flicking to the pile of papers. "Oh, Alan, come on," she said, trying to brush it off with a soft laugh. "It's not as bad as you think. I just needed a little help, that's all." "A little help?" My voice was quiet, but I could feel my hands clenching around the edge of the table. $8,000, Lydia. How is that a little help? She sighed, wiping at invisible tears. "You don't understand how hard it's been for me, Alan. I needed to feel like I had something nice, you know? Like I was worth something." I didn't say anything. I just watched her, this woman I'd given everything to, standing there and playing the victim. My mind was racing, but my voice stayed calm. "I'm done, Lydia," I said finally. "I'm opening a new bank account. From now on, my money isn't yours to spend." She blinked at me, like she couldn't believe I'd actually said it. "You can't just cut me out," she said, her voice cracking. "We're married, Alan." I stood up slowly, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "We were married," I said quietly. "But you stopped being my partner a long time ago." That afternoon, I went to the bank and opened a new account. I changed the direct deposit for my paychecks and locked her out of every joint account we had. I felt like I was finally waking up from a bad dream. When I got home, Lydia was sitting at the table, her face red and puffy from crying. She tried to talk, to plead with me, but I didn't let her. I just started printing everything out, statements, receipts, every piece of proof I had. The kitchen table turned into a fortress of paperwork. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about getting ready for what came next. As I looked at the stack of evidence in front of me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, resolve. Because no matter how much it hurt, I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. Not anymore. For the next few days, I pretended like everything was fine. I went to work, came home, and let Lydia play her games. She'd started acting like the perfect wife again, cooking dinner, folding laundry, even dressing up like she used to when we were first married. It was like she thought she could erase everything with a few home-cooked meals and a smile. I didn't buy it. I saw right through the act. At night, while she slept, I sat in the living room with all the paperwork spread out on the coffee table. I had a divorce lawyer now, Miss Carroll, sharp as a blade and twice as cold. She was the first person in years who didn't tell me I was overreacting. She just looked at the evidence and said, "We'll make this right." I met with her twice that week. We went through every account, every hidden charge, every dollar Lydia had taken. Miss Carroll was thorough. She said we'd make sure Lydia couldn't touch another cent of my money. It was exactly what I needed to hear. When I came home on Thursday night, Lydia was waiting for me, dressed up like she was going out on a date. She had even set the table with candles, plates of spaghetti, and a cheap bottle of wine. The whole place smelled like garlic bread. "Welcome home, honey," she said, her voice bright and sweet. "I thought we could have a nice dinner. Just you and me." I looked at her, at the forced smile and the flicker of desperation in her eyes. I sat down, not because I wanted to, but because I knew it would be the last time. She poured the wine and kept up the act, talking about the weather, the neighbors, anything but the truth. Halfway through the meal, I got up and went to the bedroom. I came back with the thick binder of financial records and set it on the table between us. The sound it made was louder than anything she was saying. "What's that?" she asked, her voice cracking a little. I looked her in the eyes and said it as calmly as I could. It's proof that I'm done. No more lies, no more excuses. I'm not covering for you anymore. Lydia's face twisted, her voice trembling. Alan, please. Don't do this. I swear I'll fix it. I can change. But I didn't let myself get pulled in. I'd seen the show too many times before. No, Lydia. I'm done listening to promises you never keep. I'm done pretending this is a marriage. She tried to stand, but her legs were shaking. You're overreacting. You're going to ruin everything. No, I said softly. You already did. The quiet between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. She looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, and for the first time, I saw her panic. The control she'd always had was gone, and she didn't know what to do without it. I've talked to a lawyer, I said, my voice steady. The paperwork is ready. You're not getting another cent from me. Lydia's mouth opened and closed, like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. She looked small and scared, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. I just felt free. I got up and walked to the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. The silence said everything I'd been trying to say for years. And as I stepped outside into the warm night air, I felt like I was breathing for the first time in a long time. I sat across from Ms. Carroll in her small, tidy office the next morning. She had a way of making everything feel calm, even though my whole life was about to be turned upside down. She slid the final set of divorce papers across the desk to me, her eyes steady and unwavering. This is it, she said, tapping the stack with her pen. Once you sign, we file, and Lydia won't be able to touch a dime of your money again. I took the pen she offered and signed without hesitating. My hand shook a little, but I didn't stop. I was done being the only one keeping things afloat. Done being her safety net. A couple days later, we sat in the first mediation session at a cramped law office downtown. Lydia was there, dressed to the nines like she was trying to win some sort of pageant. She batted her eyelashes and talked sweetly to the mediator, like she could charm her way out of everything. I just want us to work it out, she said in a voice that was all sugar and no substance. I know I made mistakes, but I can change. I just need Alan to give me one more chance. I didn't say a word for a long moment. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same tired pattern playing out all over again. The same lies, the same manipulation. I'm done being your backup plan, I said, my voice even. I'm not your safety net anymore. She blinked, her mouth opening like she was going to argue. But Ms. Carroll cut in, her tone polite but icy. We're not here to negotiate second chances. We're here to divide assets and ensure Lydia doesn't have access to Alan's future income. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. Please, Alan. I'm your wife. I shook my head. You were my wife. Now, you're just someone I used to know. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but I didn't feel anything. No guilt, no sadness, just a strange, steady calm. The mediator shifted in her seat, glancing at Lydia with a flicker of sympathy, but Ms. Carroll didn't miss a beat. She leaned forward, cutting through every one of Lydia's desperate words with cool precision. We're requesting full financial separation, she said firmly. No alimony, no access to any future earnings. Lydia has demonstrated a pattern of financial irresponsibility, and Alan is no longer willing to be part of that. Lydia tried again, her voice cracking with desperation. But I've changed. I swear I'll be different. I just sat there, breathing in the silence that followed her words. I didn't need to say anything else. The decision had already been made. By the time I walked out of that office, the weight of years had fallen off my shoulders. Miss Carroll gave me a small nod of respect, like she could see I was finally done playing the part of the quiet provider. And I was. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a future that was mine alone. No more lies, no more half-truths, no more excuses. Just me. After the mediation, things settled into an uncomfortable calm. Lydia refused to sign the separation papers, acting like if she ignored them long enough, I changed my mind. She went back to playing house, cooking meals I didn't ask for, and cleaning up like it was some sort of performance. I didn't play along. I stopped giving her money. Stopped letting her use the joint account. She noticed right away. The first time her debit card was declined at the grocery store, she came home seething. You're cutting me off, she snapped, slamming the front door behind her. You think you're better than me, don't you? I didn't rise to it. I just shrugged and said, you're on your own now, Lydia. Her face turned red, her eyes flashing. You're such a bastard, she hissed. I've done everything for you. I almost laughed. What exactly did you do for me, Lydia? Because all I remember is paying for everything while you sat here and spent money we didn't have. That shut her up for a moment. She tried to play the victim, tried to cry and make me feel bad, but I was done. I didn't owe her anything. Not my money, not my time, not my guilt. The fridge started getting emptier. The pantry shelves looked bare for the first time in years. Lydia started realizing she couldn't keep up the act when there was nothing left to take. One night, she came at me in tears. I'm your wife, Alan. How can you do this to me? I looked at her, my voice calm. You made your choices, Lydia. Now you live with them. She threw a dish at the wall, the shattering sound echoing in the tiny kitchen. But I didn't flinch. I'd stopped caring a long time ago. A week later, I saw her on the porch talking to the neighbors, trying to spin the story. I could hear her voice through the open window, painting herself as the abandoned wife, the poor soul left by her cruel husband. Let them believe whatever they wanted. I wasn't going to waste another minute defending myself. The final straw came when her credit card stopped working altogether. She tried to buy something online, some new shoes or makeup, I don't know, and when it didn't go through, she lost it. I found her pacing the living room, phone in hand. "They're saying my cards are maxed," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "How could you let this happen?" I didn't even bother looking up from my coffee. Not my problem anymore. For the first time in our marriage, she looked at me like she didn't know who I was. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she'd never really seen me at all. But I was finally seeing her clearly, and without the blinders of love or obligation. I walked out the door and didn't look back. As I stepped outside into the evening air, I felt something crack open inside me. Like the last piece of the old life I'd been holding on to was finally gone. And it felt good. Really good. A couple weeks after I'd stopped all financial support, I got a text from a mutual friend. It was a photo of Lydia at some bar downtown, leaning in close to a guy I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Look who finally moved on." The guy had that slick, polished look, hair gelled back, shirt unbuttoned just enough to show off a gold chain. Lydia was all smiles, hanging on his arm like nothing had ever happened. I stared at the picture for a long moment, my coffee going cold in my hand. My first thought was, good for her. She'd always been good at finding someone else to lean on. And for once, it wasn't my problem. I didn't say anything, didn't text her, didn't even think about it much. Until a couple nights later, when she came knocking on my door. I opened it to find her standing there in the same tight dress she'd worn in the photo, mascara smudged under her eyes. "I need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What do you want, Lydia?" She let out a breath, like she'd been holding it in all night. "It's about the new guy," she said, her voice small. He doesn't want me." I thought he did, but he said I was too much trouble. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, but my voice was flat, my face empty. "But that's not my problem anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "Alan, please. I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that all the anger and sadness I'd been carrying was just gone. She wasn't mine to save anymore. She never really was. "You're on your own, Lydia," I said, my voice calm and sure. "I mean that." She tried to argue, but the words wouldn't come. She just stood there, her lip trembling, like she was finally seeing what I'd known for a long time. The safety net was gone. She called me one last time the next morning. I let it ring out. The voicemail was short, just her voice, cracking with tears. "Alan, please. I'm sorry. I need help. I don't know what else to do." I deleted it without listening to the end. I didn't feel angry or even sad, just relieved. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one holding her up. I wasn't the one paying the price for her mistakes. And it felt good. Really good. I took a deep breath, feeling the quiet settle around me like a warm blanket. I knew then that I'd finally let her go. After Lydia's final call, the days turned into weeks, and I found myself in a small apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, old carpet, a leaky faucet in the bathroom, but it was mine. Every inch of it was mine, and that felt like a blessing. The first night there, I sat on the couch, no TV, no noise, and just listened to the silence. It wasn't heavy like it used to be. It was peaceful, a calm I hadn't known in years. I took on more delivery runs. Long hours on the road, but I didn't mind. I liked the feeling of knowing that every mile, every dollar I earned was mine alone. I started fixing up the apartment too. Put up shelves in the kitchen, patched the holes in the walls where someone else's memories used to be. One Saturday, I took my old fishing rod out of storage and drove down to the lake. I hadn't been fishing in years, but the moment I felt the line in my hand, something inside me settled. I caught a couple of sunfish, nothing big, but it didn't matter. It was just me, the water, and the quiet. Football season came around, and I went to the bar down the street for the first time in forever. I met a couple of guys, Frank and Joe, who lived in the building. We talked about nothing special, the game, the heat, the sorry state of the Cardinals' offense. But it felt good to just talk, to laugh without worrying about what was waiting at home. Every small thing I did for myself felt like a victory. Buying a new coffee maker, hanging up my old concert posters, even just coming home to an empty apartment that didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a fresh start. I reconnected with some old friends too. Guys I hadn't seen in years because I'd been too busy trying to keep Lydia's world from falling apart. We went fishing, watched games together, laughed about things that didn't matter. And every time I walked back into my apartment after, I felt lighter. I realized I'd spent so many years trying to be the man Lydia needed me to be that I'd forgotten who I was. Now, I was figuring it out. Slowly, piece by piece. And with every passing day, I felt a little more like myself. There were still hard days. I'd find an old receipt stuck in my wallet, or see a photo of us tucked in the back of a drawer. For a second, the old ache would come back. But then I'd remember how far I'd come, how far I'd climbed out of that hole, and the ache would fade. One night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the old fishing rod leaning against the wall. I thought about how that rod had been mine since I was a kid, how it had been with me through everything. And I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't living for someone else. I was living for me. 6 months later, I found myself sitting on the tiny balcony of my apartment on a cool fall evening. I had a beer in my hand and my old fishing rod propped up in the corner, waiting for the next Saturday morning trip. The sun was setting, turning the sky into a streak of gold and pink, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. I thought about everything that had happened, how it all started with Lydia's careless shrug when I came home after a long day, how I'd finally seen the truth in her eyes when she threw away that burger like it was trash. I thought about the night spent in silence, the fights I didn't bother to have anymore, and the way she'd tried to keep me trapped in a life that was never really mine. I didn't hate her. I didn't even think about her much anymore. She was just part of the story that had brought me here, to this little apartment where the quiet didn't feel empty, it felt like freedom. The only thing I felt for her now was a distant sort of pity. Because while she was still out there looking for someone to save her, I was finally learning how to save myself. The nights were getting colder, but I didn't mind. I'd learned to find comfort in the quiet. I'd learned to trust that I didn't need anyone else to make my life worth living. It was enough to know that tomorrow was mine. My choices, my work, my life. I took another sip of beer and let my thoughts wander. I thought about the miles I'd driven, the long stretches of desert road, the sun-baked highways that had always felt like a burden before. Now, they felt like freedom. Like every mile was another step away from the man I'd been when I let Lydia's needs drown out my own. The quiet was different now. It wasn't something to fear. It was a reminder that I had finally let go of the weight that had been crushing me for so long. I thought about my old friends, the ones who'd stuck around, and the new ones I'd made down at the bar. I thought about the fish I'd caught, the cold beers and quiet evenings spent watching the Cardinals lose another game. I thought about how good it felt to wake up in the morning and know I didn't owe anyone anything except myself. I smiled as I sat there, watching the last light of the day fade into night. For the first time in years, I didn't feel tired or afraid. I felt ready. Because tomorrow wasn't a burden anymore. It was a chance. And I was finally free.